Hello, once again. Welcome back to another episode of Coffee Council. And as Adi teased you guys in the previous episode, we were going to talk about the crown jewel of Malaysia, the only Malaysian company in the top 500, Fortune 500, which is Petronas, a money maker. Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. All right, so it's not a good year 2024 for Petronas as well as 2025 because just a few days ago the CEO of Petronas, Timothy mentioned that Petronas will not exist in the next 10 years if they do not do a right sizing. And what it means in corporate lingo is just retrenchment. Well, maybe some less than retrenchment, but what they are hinting is that these enablers around 5 or 6 thousand workers out of 53,000 Petronas staffs worldwide. Petronas has a presence in 100 countries, so it's huge. You can imagine how big Petronas is. But the Achilles heels of Petronas here is coming from very, very their own strength as well, which is Sarawak. That's Petros coming up. It's just recently set up in 2021, and they want to steal that very on on treasure, which is the as a main aggregator of gas in Sarawak, which is account around a big chunk, 60 or 70% of Petronas revenue. What's your take, Ade, on this new Petronas scandal? Petronas scandal issue.
I'm going to say, scandal is too big of a word. Let's use PR speak, the same PR speak that the CEO used, which is it's resizing, not downsizing. It's resizing, right? Trying to reappropriate talent to where they can be deployed most effectively, right? Definitely clever PR speak over there on the Petronas. In a way, I can believe it. But of course, the reasoning being made is that Petronas is being hampered and dogged by all kinds of geopolitical uncertainties. So they need, which affects a lot of crude oil prices, and which is the main lifeblood of their business practices, their business model. So they need to find ways to diversify, and by that they need to be leaner, more agile. Like again, PR corporate speak here, so that they can react and deploy themselves wherever necessary to diversify their commodities, to expand to different markets, and to tap into other potential revenue streams here. Laudable effort by Petronas. How it becomes to practice is very would have to keep a lot of people's eyes will be on it, because, like you said, Petronas is the crown jewel of Malaysia, right? They account for 30 to 40% of government revenue. If you had to make a comparison to something historical, it's almost like the East India Trading Company from 300 years ago. If it's it's a company that operates across the world and is almost the lifeblood of the British Empire, and at the same time exerts a lot of political influence across the spheres and regions that it operates in. Just like for Petronas, it exerts a lot of influence over across Malaysia. If we can feel it in Sabah here, because Petronas takes up all the, handles all the oil and gas industries and fields, which is why, and same with Sarawak, and that is why you have Sarawak with Petros going into some kind of, I wouldn't say battle, people like to call it battle, but some kind of tussle for agency of oil and gas resources between Sarawak and Petronas here. So there is this, Petronas, you cannot run away from it. It is something that Malaysia is heavily reliant on. Now, us in Sabah, we always look to Petronas. Oh, maybe this is evil corporation that has come to suck us dry, exploit us of resources, and transfer it back to to build some mega project over in KL, right? But there is, you could say there's some merit to that. But when it comes to employment, it comes to job opportunities, Petronas has employed people from all across Malaysia. We even have Petronas over here in Sabah, right next to the UTC building, in KK over here. But it cannot understate that Petronas plays a huge role in Malaysia itself, not just economy, but politically as well. I think Petronas has been, the revenue generative and dividends generated from Petronas has been used to bail out other government linked companies, right, and their own subsidiaries. So Petronas is we cannot understate it. It's all encompassing. It has to, whether or not we like it or not, they need to be able to sustain themselves to ensure that the government is giving the some ample revenue that it needs to continue the operations and the cost that for all these projects that the government's doing. It's the lifeblood of government spending. So it's I would say uh, I mean, we don't know it, right? We don't look at it that way. I think for most Malaysians, we don't look at how a lot of the economy is sustained through Petronas itself. Probably once the lights go off, right, then we'll finally realize that this corporate machine that we know very little about, right, is powering a lot of and enabling a lot of the things that we tend to take for granted, like for example subsidies, right, oil subsidies. That's generated through government revenue, which is drawn from Petronas revenue, Petronas dividends. So these things play to one another and are very interdependent on each other. If you want to look at the worst case scenario, is that you look at the in Venezuela, where the state energy concern was the lifeblood, and then when not being able to diversify, once everything comes crashing down, you see where Venezuela is right now, in a very precarious situation. So I think Petronas is trying to avoid that, and Malaysia also understands that by diversifying the economy to be more resilient, and to add more value, to make sure that it's not so affected by global uncertainties, because there's so many right now. So that I think before I go even more than that, Hafiz, where do you pick up from all this?
Since the press conference by the CEO, Tengku Taufik, a lot of you can see comments there. All the comments that backing up Petronas. I think mostly we all know they are from Semenanjung, and I can see very rarely those who are backing up Sarawak or even from Sabah. We are the Sabahans, and this is the platform that we use to try to highlight some of the issue, because I share the sentiment from, because it's gonna be it possibly, if Sarawak successful with this application, I think maybe Sabah could follow suit as well, like we mentioned in a few episodes ago. So I can say I'm gonna back up the Sarawak government here, because Petronas is like a very fat man that's been fed through so many years since the inception of Petroleum Act. You want to call it is unfair to Sarawak or Sabah or these sites, with the royalty being paid or not, whatever. Now that this giant Petronas, someone's tried to, now there's a David that wants to fight this Goliath, and the people, backing up Petronas says, hey, it's unfair, it's going to affect the nations. So what? Because all these most revenues that so-called funded the Petronas Twin Towers, all this a lot of allocations to government is ultimately belong to these respective the states, namely Sarawak, Sabah, Kelantan, Terengganu. They deserve the rights after so many years, 50 years of the formation of Petronas. And I think it's rightly so. We say to Sarawak, Sabah, all these oil states, saying, okay, maybe we can work something out here. And that's what Tengku Taufik trying to do here, to mitigate the collateral damage for Petronas here. He said that this retrenchment or this resizing is not gonna, it's not really related to Petros, but we all know it is also related to Petros, because at the same time we understand oil and gas is a sunset industry, right? It's gonna be gone less than whatever, I don't know, maybe as soon as 20 years. So there should be a strategy to diversify business portfolio for Petronas. But this Petros, it just expedite everything, to Petronas. That's why he said 10 years it's not gonna exist anymore if they don't do something about it. So I think it's good in terms of business practice for Petronas to prepare for the near future, as well as for Sarawak, that just is like a baby Petros that wants to deal with the oil and gas, whatever. Do they have the manpower for it? Will they just can easily snatch this talents from Shell or Petronas? Would that be the case? It's not a guaranteed success for Sarawak. So I think we should back up some Sarawak here so that they can have another so-called Petronas 2.0, maybe much smaller, but they have their own right to be successful or whatnot. So I think the approach here is that we should give some leeway to Sarawak to prove that they can do the job and actually make more diversified. So it's not going to be monopolized by Petronas anymore, but ultimately the federal government will get so-called allocation also, because these two are Malaysian company. Even though they're still paying some percentage to the federal government, is it not? So in terms of the allocation, what do you call that, allocation money for federal government, I think you should not worry about that. It's just how much should be given now that we know, after so many years, some of these royalties not being paid off, whatever. Let's do some negotiation again. That's all that I can see from Sarawak government point of view. All that they want is what they have. It's rightly theirs. It's in their continental shelf, and who is Sarawak? Even Sarawak protected with that Petroleum Act. Is that really the road that you want to go down to dealing with Sarawak, using some legality to it, instead of just, okay, let's go to a round table, do some discussion, and we can work out something from here. It's a win-win situation, and both of them will walk out that room with the happy faces, rather than just want to keep going to the court. And yes, of course Abang Joe gonna say that this is we can find something, but we know behind the closed doors it's not what he is supposed to say.
Yeah, I think when you brought up Sarawak and Petros, I think they have the benefit of leanness right now, which is what Petronas is trying to achieve. Because Petros is set up with a very particular focus that is set by the state itself. State priorities is there on what they want to do. And what they want is like obviously agency of its oil and gas, but also to expand into decarbonization, like energy sources that emphasize decarbonization, meeting all the ESG targets and all the green ethical considerations, which Petronas is rapidly trying to deploy itself to meet, which is why they want to diversify their business portfolio here. But that would take some time as we adjust to that reality, right? But in the meantime, it doesn't change the fact that right now it's a precarious situation, because if this Petronas, the direction that Petronas is taking, is not able to navigate through the tough times and rough waters that it has laid out, right? Because 10 years it would cease. It's almost like an alarming premonition, right? That it is quite bad as it is that we have to take this course of action, right? Obviously, trying to calm the water, trying to calm sentiments, saying, "Oh, okay, well, it's under control, right?" It doesn't change the fact that we are leaving a great deal of economic and financial health of Malaysia to a group of corporates here, right? It's corporate, hugely in the responsibility of the corporate leaders that we have. So their leadership is just as imperative as the political leadership that we always strive on. We always look at the political leadership, but we also need to look at the corporate leadership, the people who are handling the financial portfolio of big companies that operates across 50 different countries and embedded into a very massive supply chain, which at any time could be easily disrupted, right? So when you talked about like Petronas being giant, right? It reminds me of actually I looked it up while you were talking of this. It reminds me of this one painting by Salvador Dali, which is the elephants on stilts. Like, so I'll show it here if any of the guests can see. So elephants are big, majestic, very regal and majestic, right? In their strength and power, right? But you see that these elephants, right? They're standing above, they're overlooking the ground below them, right? But the question is that painting a snapshot at a particular moment, or is it a permanent state of affairs, right? Is Petronas an elephant on stilts right now? Because one of the elephants, I think, looks like it's going to trip at any time, right? And going to just come crashing down, come to a pile of mush on the ground, right? Is Petronas an elephant on stilts, on borrowed time here? A massive giant that is, it could eventually crumble under its own weight because it's just being propped up and up and up to, keep on bolstering and reinforcing itself at the expense of long-term stability here. Right? Is Petronas going to be similar to the elephants here? Because we have a lot of uncertainties, and if not astute stewardship of RGLCs is going to be very, very dangerous unless Malaysia is able to expedite its industries, right? To expedite the diversification of its industries, become less reliant on oil and gas exports, and to become more self-sustainable, self-reliant, and self-sufficient in other industries as well. This is, I think, is the holy grail for a lot of countries now, which don't really have. They're trying to find ways to decouple themselves from the US-China trade war by not being so reliant on these two great economies here. I think, in a way, not just Petronas is the elephant on stilts. I think the whole global system that we have right now is an elephant on stilts here. Anything can happen, and it will affect nearly everyone. The fact that like I'm very off tangent, but just another allegory here, another analogy here is that it's like when you look at transoceanic undersea cables is what's used for you all people to watch Kopitiam Council here is what's facilitating the technology here. We have no idea how any of this kind of technology works. It might as well just be magic to me and Hafiz here. That our the fact that we can connect like this is dependent and wholly contingent on these kinds of wonderful technology that we have that can easily I mean, like, you look at the cables, right? It's like
Yeah.
suspended over like deep crevasses in the oceans that covers thousands of miles. How's anyone going to maintain that, right? The point is that our systems are very vulnerable here. I mean, I might sound alarmist or like very doom saying all this, but it's just a cautionary tale for Petronas that they have to be responsible with what they are doing with their business practices moving forward. And we hope that they would succeed. In the same time, Sarawak is able to rise to the occasion and aspirations that it sets out to do with Petros.
Like I mentioned, Adi, oil and gas is sunset industry, and it's not just Petronas facing this problem. Petronas is not the only oil and gas company in the world. Shell, Caltex, Petron, Essos, they are all having the same problem because automation and AI, increase the efficiency, so they don't need all these redundant workers. So, I echo what you said. Diversification should be something that they are all top priority because it's coming nearer than they expected it to be. And just want to mention a little bit that this the host the Petronas issue is that Petronas has the advantage of being a 50-year-old company and with a lot of money. I mean, if you have this as an advantage, I think it's easier to say, like, I mean, you can just pivot, right? Like with all this energy, what they call this green energy or whatever, you are still in the energy industry, and people still need oil in the future because plastics. Hey, where do you think plastic came from? It's from petroleum. So I mean, there's always a demand for this. Of course, it's going to be a huge decline for it, but this is the time to prove that Petronas can survive without these four stealth. So just stand on your own feet, whatever size that you have. Don't I mean Petronas only can see as far as they can see, only because they're standing on the shoulder of giants. And these are giants, actually Petronas, Sabah, Kelantan, or Terengganu. Unfortunately, if you are in favor of Petronas, but this is my argument. And Petronas should see this as an opportunity to restructure this company or whatever. Don't see it as a resistance to Petronas 50-year-old practices. I mean, those are very good years for Petronas. You could have never asked better years for Petronas, and this is the time for them to pivot or restructure. Any last words for this, Adi?
I think when it comes to, definitely we'll be keeping an eye on the ongoings of Petronas. We did cover the whole situation with Petros and Petronas, so we definitely have a vested interest in looking at an issue like this. If you find it interesting, or maybe you find any of our ideas on it or thoughts on it wrong or right, do let us know. At the end of the day, we are just talking as Sabahans who observe the effects and the practices that Petronas has brought upon Sabah, so that Hafiz in KL right now can enjoy the nice view of the Petronas Twin Towers. So
Yes, I can see it.
It's if you're confident about Petronas, do you think Petronas is still relevant today as I think so? Do let us know. But I think that is enough time for this episode, Hafiz, for this week. We hope that you enjoyed the past episodes. We went quite all over the place, all different type of topics here. But if you like episodes and content like this, please let us know, and what kind of other topics should we cover. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. But if you like short form content like shorts and reels, Hafiz, where can our listeners go to?
They can definitely go to TikTok and Instagram. These are the places where you can find all those less than 1 minute long videos. And if you want, what is it they want to say, that watching YouTubes and whatnot, and because if you watching this long, we're about to end this episode, please consider subscribing, because I think around 90% of our viewers are not subscribers. It will help us a lot, and our commitment to you guys is to come up with new episodes every week, at least from perspective of Sabahan, to see domestic, international geopolitics issue, so that we can provide with something, some an angle. So, maybe in the blind side of your reality. So you might want to come to a Copitem Council to see a little bit, not so similar view, worldview from all of you. So please consider subscribe, and that's our commitment to all of you. And with that, we end this episode. Goodbye, friends.